Hello, everybody. It's another week gone by, and that means it's time for another topic of the week. Apologize, I'm a day late on this. I was out of town with the wife, but that doesn't matter. We're here now, and we're here with a new topic, as we will be every week. And first things first, standard preamble. Thanks to everybody who made some great videos for last week. Even had a couple people submit videos who I hadn't seen before, so that was totally awesome. I encourage all of you, even if you watch, make a video, comment, join in the conversation. I love it. And as usual, all of those videos are linked on last week's video, which is linked down below. So if you want to go watch everything about that, which was what you love about the Age of Sigmar, you can click down there and see what that is. This week, however, we're going to turn to the Fluff Bunnies. It's time to get fluffy. And for this topic of the week, what I want to talk about is Fluff in Warhammer, the story. So on the last episode of War Games, we had one of the questions that was on there that was debated by our scholars was, what is the core of Warhammer? Is it the story, the rules, whatever? And Matiram ended up winning that round with his argument about the fluff. And I don't know if I'm totally sold, but I'll say this for sure. His argument was super strong, and he is right that it is very important. Warhammer is a multi-platform phenomenon. Not only is it the game we all play on the tabletop, but obviously there are video games and novels and a bunch of other media about Warhammer. And that only works if the fluff, whatever the core of that world is compelling enough to exist no matter what the underlying media is that's containing it. And I've always found the fluff of Warhammer to be an interesting thing. For me, I've always loved the world sort of as a whole, or the world at a high level, and the interactions of those things. I must admit, I've never found the individual stories very compelling. That is to say, I don't really care about Felix and Gotrek or anybody like that. It's more the overarching narrative of the world that I found fascinating. I loved the character of the nations. They themselves were more or less actually the people, the protagonists in the story. I always felt like when we got to the level of individuals, you almost lost it. But I loved the sort of tone, the tenor of the fluff, the feeling of the world, the grittiness of it. When you touch the Warhammer world, you almost expect to come back with dirt on your fingertips, right? It has this simultaneously completely fantastical, ridiculous nature to it. This over the top, everything's 11 nature, while at the same time being very realistic and gritty. And that's a really interesting balance to walk, and one that Warhammer has done very well throughout its history. Now, obviously, now we are finding ourselves in a new age of new fluff to explore. Haven't picked up my Quest for Gul Maraz book yet, but I'm looking forward to it, and I heard that there's a lot of good stuff explained in there. And so that brings me to this topic of the week, which is, what is your favorite piece of fluff from Warhammer? What is your favorite story? What is it about the fluff that you like? So, is it a particular nation? Is it the overall story? Did you read a couple novels and that's what got you into it, right? What about the fluff, from an individual story to the entire world, but what is it about that fluff that you like, that draws you in, that makes you want to experience the game through any of the platforms that are available out there to do so, to experience that world through any of those platforms? I have one example amongst many. There are certainly a lot of things I love, but one does stand out, and that is this book right here. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. That is the old 5th edition Bretonnia book. Beautiful book. I'm very happy that I still own this. And this is maybe my favorite piece of fluff that has ever been created for Warhammer. And I understand it's actually an army book, and so theoretically it contains rules, and of course it does. But as per usual, even as even the books now, this is full of all sorts of other supporting story information, most of which has nothing to do with hard rules or anything like that, whether it be painting or just talking about them, you know, squires and men-at-arms, the code of chivalry, all that sort of thing. What I love about this book is it's the picture of a Bretonia that doesn't exist as of 8th edition. So the fluff of Warhammer was never static, even, that is to say, like, and I don't mean that in an evolving narrative way, I just mean things could just be changed, retconned, re-explained. This Bretonia is not the Bretonia of 6th, 7th, and 8th edition, not even close. In this Bretonia, the nobles are noble and heroic, and new knights can be risen up from the peasantry through acts of valor and errantry and heroism. And what you have is a whole society all sort of moving together toward this great and glorious and noble purpose, living under this code of chivalry sort of willingly. And it's just absolutely, it's aspirational fluff. When you read this, it's so different than much of the other world. I know I just talked about that grittiness. And it's because the rest of the world is so gritty that I love this so much, in that it stands apart. If everybody in the world looked like this, if it was all stark whites and blacks, or lights and darks of good and evil, then this would be much less impressive. This would just be one voice amongst a chorus. But because this one stands apart so differently is what I liked. That's one of the things I hated about the 6th edition Bretonia book, is that they made it just like everything else. But if you have this book, or you can get your hands on it, I highly recommend it. There's a little tale in the back here called The Questing Knight's Tale. There you go, right there. This is a absolutely beautiful story about two questing knights seeking after the Grail and the sacrifice and the heroism that they encounter on their quest. And I absolutely love this book, and reading a book like this made me want to play the army, to experience this, to collect this, to have these noble knights in my collection. Like I said, it felt aspirational to read this. They themselves are better people than probably most of us are, certainly better than I am. And it makes you want to believe in something sort of bigger than yourself in that way. And it's amazing that they can communicate that through what's effectively just a silly game book, right? So, that's my piece of fluff I love. And one amongst many, like I said, there are many other things fluff-wise I love about this game. The Skaven clans and all sorts of things like that, and the backstabbing that goes on there for totally different reasons. The stories of the Tomb Kings and of Cetra and stuff like that. I'm sure I could go on for hours. But that's not what this is here for. This is here to ask you what your favorite piece of fluff is. In a book, did you have a favorite book like me? Did you have a favorite story? What is it about the fluff that drew you in? Or anything like that. Novel, army book, something you experienced in a game that was based on Warhammer, Warhammer fantasy, role-playing game, whatever. Whatever it happened to be, I'd love to hear it. Share it with us, because I think it's cool. And by the way, it could be old world, new world, Age of Sigmar, old. I don't care. It's not about that. It's just about sharing those stories, which is what this is all about. Because the reality is there's way too much fluff for anybody but the most dedicated of sort of Warhammer scholars to really intake. And so this is a great way to share what we all think is the best, and to help us all experience that together. And I'm very excited about that. So I look forward to seeing your videos and your responses down below of your favorite piece of fluff. And as always, we'll see you next time.